Pointers good? Yep. As an Oklahoma City Thunder fan, 2016 was both the greatest year and the most devastating year. The good news was that Kevin Durant and squad held a 3-1 lead on the 73-9 Golden State Warriors and were just one win away from advancing to the NBA Finals. A translation for those of you who do not follow basketball, the underdogs were about to take down a legendary, historically great opponent until they didn't. Oklahoma City lost 3 games in a row and Golden State advanced. But that wasn't the worst thing that happened. No, the real tragedy was what happened next. On July 4th, 2016, a day that will live in infamy in the Finney household, this happened.
Oh, that's what they told me.
First things first, you put Kevin in the middle. Let's get that out of the way. Thanks for coming out. This is a great day for the Golden State Warriors, a great day for the NBA, and really something truly significant that we are proud to share with all of you. I'm Bob Fitzgerald, the Warriors TV announcer. I want to welcome those of you watching on CSN Bay Area, those of you listening on KNBR. We want to welcome our owner, Joe Lacob, who is here. Our president, Rick Welts, is here. And Kevin Durant's people, Wayne Pratt, his father is here. Rayvon Lee, his brother, is here. Rich Kleiman, his agent. Charlie Bell, his business manager. And Thomas Abbey, who handles all his security. We have the 2015 Executive of the Year, the GM of the Warriors, Bob Myers. The 2016 Coach of the Year, Steve Kerr. And the Rookie of the Year, an Olympic gold medalist, a 4-time scoring champion, a 7-time All-Star, an MVP of the league, Kevin Durant.
Kevin Durant joined the Golden State Warriors. Let me say that again. Kevin Durant, the hero of Oklahoma City, my childhood hero next to Will Smith, joined forces with the evil Golden State Warriors. It's been 7 years, and I'm still not over it. He was supposed to be the one to defeat the Warriors. He was beloved by everyone and me, and we all wanted to see him win, but instead, well, he decided that if I can't beat them, I'll just join them. Now, to be fair to Kevin, we are just talking about basketball here. I'm sure he's a respectable human being. I'm sure he's a good person. He's still an exceptional athlete. And even though he ruined the competitive balance of the NBA for 3 years, his decision was not life or death, well, except for me. But unfortunately, the same can't be said about today's royal and his fateful decision that doomed an entire kingdom. King Ahaz was the 12th king of the southern kingdom, meaning he comes from the family line of David and Solomon. He became king at just the age of 20 and was immediately met with a Golden State-sized problem. During the 8th century, the Neo-Assyrians dominated the Mediterranean world under the leadership of this guy named Tiglath-Pileser III, who Jill and I love to nickname as TP3 in our house. TP3 was named after an Assyrian god of war, and he really lived up to his namesake. TP3 became king through a palace coup. He was famous for raising and training an army that was second to none, and he was known for his brutality throughout the ancient world. The enemies of TP3 often ended up flayed or impaled or crucified, and if he decided to show you mercy, he would just, destroy your home, your language, your culture permanently and exile you from your country. So this was a bad dude and a dominant dude. And just to give you an idea of how dominant TP3 was, take a look at this map right here. Everything you see that is green is the Neo-Assyrian Empire. And do you see that small little purple spot on the map? That was Ahaz's kingdom. Now, around that same time, there was this king in the northern kingdom called Pekah, who tried his best to be Nick fury. He partnered with Rezin, the king of Aram, and together they became an Avengers-like team called the Syria-Ephraimite Coalition. But we're just going to call them the SEC. Now, the SEC wants to recruit this new youngster Ahaz to join their team. And here's basically Pekah's sales pitch to Ahaz. If Ahaz in the south joined Pekah's north and Rezin's Aram, then maybe they have a shot at taking down TP3. So Ahaz hears this sell pitch and he goes home, he opens up his Google map, and here's what he sees. Now the light blue on that map is Pekah and the north, and the yellow is Rezin and Aram. And let me remind you again that the green is Assyria. So Ahaz nopes his way out of the SEC and leaves Pekah and Rezin on red. And this ticks off the two older kings. And so they peer pressure Ahaz into joining them. And by peer pressure, I mean they send an army to kill Ahaz so they can install a king who is willing to join the Avengers or the SEC. Now, imagine this. In that entire situation, you're a 20-year-old and you just became king. An unbeatable empire is slowly taking over the world. Your two allies want to take them on, but you know it's a losing cause and you're scared. And then to make matters worse, your allies turn on you, they become the mighty SAC, and then kill at least 120,000 members of your troops. So what do you do? Who could possibly help you take out Team Yellow and Team Blue? Who can take out this SEC, this Avengers-like team made up of your allies? Who? Well, that's right. Ahaz decides there's only one possible solution. It's time to join the Golden State Warriors. It's time to join the Assyrian Empire. But just before he can sign the paperwork and receive his jersey and go to the press conference with TP3, Ahaz receives a visitor, a prophet by the name of Isaiah. And here's what he has to say to Ahaz. Let's read this together. When Ahaz was king of the south, or king of Judah, King Rezin of Aram, and Pekah, king of the north, Israel, marched up to fight against Jerusalem, but they could not overpower it. Now, Judah was told Rezin has allied himself with Pekah. So the hearts of Ahaz and his people were shaken, as the trees of the forest are shaken by the wind. Then the Lord said to Isaiah, "Go out, you and your son, Shir-Jashub, to meet Ahaz at the end of the aqueduct of the upper pool on the road to the launderer's field. Say to him, be careful, keep calm, and don't be afraid. Do not lose heart because of these two smoldering stubs of firewood, because of the fierce anger of Rezin and Pekah. These two have plotted your ruin, saying, let us invade Judah. Let us tear it apart and divide it among ourselves and make the son of Tabeel king over it. Yet this is what the sovereign Lord says, it will not take place. It will not happen. The capital of the east is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is just a mortal Rezin. And within 65 years, the north will be too shattered to be a people, because the capital of the north is just Samaria, and the head of Samaria is only just Pekah. If you do not stand firm in your faith, you will not stand at all." Joining the Assyrian Empire might feel like the only option and the best option, but Isaiah warns Ahaz not to do it. It's not just the ethical problem of teaming up with the bad guys that concerns Isaiah, but the theological problem that comes with this alliance with Assyria. Ahaz knows that if he joins TP3, he can only do so under one condition: by claiming and serving TP3 as the true God of the universe. If Ahaz makes this decision, if his people submit themselves under the lordship of TP3, then God's mission to redeem and bless the world through the family of Abraham and David will be compromised. Because the point of Ahaz's kingdom, which he inherited from David, was not to be like everyone else. Assyria, by word and deed, communicated a message to the world that God is violent, cruel, unforgiving, and rules with force. And it was up to Ahaz and his kingdom to tell and embody a different message that God is compassionate, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love. But tragically, Ahaz rejects both Isaiah's advice and his responsibility as the leader of God's people. Instead of standing firm in faith, he gives into fear. Here's what happens according to 2 Kings chapter 16. Ahaz sent messengers to say to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, "I am your servant and vassal. Come up and save me out of the hand of the king of Aram and the king of Israel who are attacking me." And Ahaz took the silver and gold found in the temple of the Lord and in the treasuries of the royal palace and sent it as a gift to the king of Assyria. The king of Assyria complied by attacking Damascus and capturing it. He deported its inhabitants to Kir and put Rezin to death. King Ahaz cut off the side panels and removed the basins from the movable stands. He removed the sea from the bronze bowls that supported it and set it on a stone base. He took away the Sabbath canopy that had been built at the temple and removed the royal entryway outside the temple of the Lord in deference to the king of Assyria. By pledging allegiance to TP3, Ahaz was able to eliminate the threat of the SEC immediately. With Rezin dead, Pekah stood alone, and in due time, the northern kingdom was completely wiped out in 722 BC. But Ahaz achieved his security at a major cost. He was forced to pay tributes to Assyria for the rest of his life. His kingdom was no longer politically independent. He desecrated God's temple to honor TP3, and Ahaz was no longer in relationship with the one who wanted to save him. He was no longer in relationship with God. And why did this all happen? Because Ahaz's fear was greater than his faith. In fact, his fear was so crippling that he even sacrificed his son as a burnt offering, hoping that such a ritual would further protect his throne. Now, Ahaz's problem wasn't being afraid, and you and I would have to be out of tune with the world never to be scared. There's so much to worry about and to be anxious over, and I don't need to name those things because the list of those things are already coming to the forefront of your mind. But where we run into trouble, however, is when our worries, our fears, and anxieties begin to take control of the decisions we make. Because if there's one thing I've learned from experience, it's this, that no good decisions come out of fear. And theologically speaking, living from a place of fear is what the Bible calls idolatry. Now, you may be thinking, idolatry? That seems like a harsh and unfair judgment. I don't worship TP3. I've never sacrificed my children or thought about it. How does living into fear equal idolatry? And the answer is this, because idolatry is any time we allow someone else or something else besides God to dictate how we live. Which means if the content of our fear drives us away from God and shapes the way we live apart from God, then what we fear has become greater to us than God. Here's some examples of how that plays out in modern life. For example, I am afraid of not having enough. Therefore, I will live to secure more for myself than to live into the generosity God has called me to. Or again, I am afraid of being alone. Therefore, I will take whatever relationships are available rather than pursue the life-giving friendships God has made for me. Or I am afraid of being mistreated. Therefore, I stay away from the people who can wrong and harm me rather than practice the enemy love God has modeled for me. Or maybe it's I am afraid of not being in control. Therefore, I will aggressively try to get my way rather than imitate God's self-giving humility for me. And by the way, these are not just made-up scenarios. These are just some of the temptations to idolatry that I've experienced in 31 years. And I'm sure you've had your own Ahaz moments where fear has taken you further away from God, where fear has become greater to you than God. And if you've ever been there like me, you know that's not a great place to be. Because a life lived out of fear often feels like you are constantly drowning in the fear. And you are trying your best to keep yourself afloat and grabbing onto whatever is nearby to keep you at bay. But the entire time, you know that there's nothing under you, and you are one wrong move from going under. But Jesus' desire for us is not to drown in our fears, but it's to walk across them. Jesus knows that there is no life absent of wind and waves and storms. And in fact, he even says this, that in this life, you will have many troubles. Jesus promises us that there's going to be a lot of challenges, a lot of setbacks, and so much in this life that will make us afraid. And yet, Jesus also says this, be courageous, for I have overcome the world. In the Greek, Jesus says, I have Nike'd the world. What do you think of when you hear that word Nike? I'm sure you're thinking of championships and world-class performances and the overabundance of organ jerseys. And yes, you're also thinking of Michael Jordan, right? Well, that's because Nike was named, the brand was named from the Greek word meaning victory. And I don't know about you, but I think it doesn't matter how good or how bad you are as a basketball player, so long as you got Jordan on the court and you're always looking for him, you can't lose, right? You will win. You will have Nike. You will have victory. And in this life, we are going to face game time situations as well, where we are overwhelmed, hard-pressed, exhausted, and afraid. And in those moments, the questions we need to ask ourselves is, who are we looking for on this court called life? Are we looking to make it happen on our own? Are we like Ahaz, looking for less than satisfactory answers and solutions to help us and save us from our mess? Or are we looking for the one person in life who will never fail us? When Jesus says, I have Nike'd the world, he is saying that no matter what life throws your way, no matter what happens in this world, you can depend on Jesus to lead you to victory. You can trust that Jesus and his ways are greater than your fears. And all you need to do is fix your eyes on him and walk toward him. And if you do that, you cannot drown. Now, I admit it's a lot easier said than done. And I've done the very opposite of what I've just said in my own life. 3 years ago, I knew it was time for me to leave my job because I was going to work angry. I was leaving work exhausted. And to be honest, I was becoming more bitter, less patient, and unloving. In short, I was becoming less and less like Jesus. And yes, that was having an impact on my marriage, my friendships, and even my mental health. So what did I do? I stayed 6 more months, telling myself that the income was worth it. The relationships I had were worth it. Where I lived was worth it. The students I was with were worth it. The networking opportunities were worth it. But honestly, if I was being really honest, what was keeping me there was not all of that, but it was fear. I was afraid about who I would be without that job. Who would I go to if I no longer had my friends? If I was even good enough to find anything after it, and if God would take care of me and my family. The good news is that God surrounded me with amazing people who helped me to have the courage to leave, who wisely guided me to put my trust in Jesus more so than anything this job could offer me. And if you know my story, yes, this led to 6 months of unemployment, which I would never choose again. It's not very fun, but guess what? It was also 6 months of learning God provides far beyond what I ask. It was 6 months of learning that my value is not contingent on what I do, but whose I am. It was 6 months of me learning that living by fear takes me further from the abundant life God wants for me. But living by faith, though challenging and frightening, is the greatest good I can ever experience, and is the greatest good that you will ever experience as well. This week, when fear begins to take hold of your life, when it begins to dictate what you do, where you go, and who you become, I want to encourage you to pause, to breathe, and to hear what God has to say to you through the same Isaiah who spoke to Ahaz. He says this, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God." And this is the same God who in Jesus has Nike'd the world, overcome this world, and who is greater than all our fears. This God can be trusted, so do not fear.